Sweetheart, this isn't Shark Tank. We don't haggle with entry-level support, Denise from HR chirped while tapping her acrylics against a stapler like she was auditioning for a corporate-themed horror film. She smiled while I stood there. With a 14-page dossier, itemized, highlighted, time-stamped. Every supplier I'd rescued from onboarding hell. Each system I'd rebuilt using duct tape, caffeine, and a decade of institutional knowledge. Every fire I'd smothered while the rest of the team debated snack orders in Slack threads. She glanced at the file once, then tilted her head with that passive-aggressive sympathy reserved for underpaid workhorses who dared ask for oats. I didn't argue. I didn't blink. I didn't give her the performance she clearly wanted. Instead, I nodded. Calm. Calculated. Like someone sealing the envelope on a subpoena. But let's rewind a bit. Just a week earlier, I was huddled in the break room beneath flickering fluorescent lights, nursing instant noodles and chasing vendor bugs the automation team had buried beneath 3 years of broken scripts. The air stank of scorched popcorn and defeat. I'd been manually reconciling invoices that our integrations should have handled in real time, if those integrations weren't ancient relics stitched together by Steve from IT during what I can only assume was an out-of-body experience. That week, I stayed late every night. Bypassed 3 major outages. Discovered a recurring billing glitch hemorrhaging $22,000 a month. Patched it. Documented it. Sent it up the chain. Got a thumbs up emoji in return from Brad, my direct manager, who once asked me if APIs were a kind of salad.so when I walked into HR. I wasn't there to beg. I brought receipts. And what I got in return was, sweetheart. Anyway, if you've ever been stonewalled by someone who's never fixed anything but a jammed printer, I get you. And hey, if you're the type who cheers when the quiet ones flip the table, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm building this channel one corporate horror story at a time, and your click helps fire one more Denise into orbit. Back to the tale. I left that HR meeting with my shoulders squared and my teeth clenched. Denise escorted me out with a smile. Like she'd euthanized a puppy, saying, "We really do appreciate you. We just need to be equitable to the rest of the department." You know, the same department that needed 3 people to reset a password while I was out sick for 1 day. I didn't cry. I didn't rage post. I went home, brewed a stale peppermint tea bag, fired up my dusty personal laptop, and opened LinkedIn. I didn't even touch my resume. I just started scrolling, not for jobs, for names, every vendor. Each logistics partner. Any client we'd ever fumbled during an onboarding call. I made a mental list. Cross-referenced who had suffered the most. From our internal chaos. By morning, I'd mapped out an entire ecosystem of business relationships we'd mistreated or ignored. Then came the message, "Hey, your name came up during our internal audit. You're the one who fixed our contract platform last quarter, right?" It was from a senior analyst at a medical logistics company, one of our biggest clients. I'd spent weeks dragging their system through 3 onboarding disasters and 2 outages caused by our laughable integration team. The guy wanted to meet. Informal. Just to pick my brain. I smiled and took a PTO day. Didn't notify Brad. Why? Bother? Brad still thought I was part-time. I sat across from them in a glass conference room, sipping actual coffee, not the break room tar water I was used to. They peppered me with questions about their tech stack, questions I answered in minutes, because I was the one who kept their system duct-taped together in the first place. Turns out their operations were still being throttled by code I duct-taped 3 job titles ago. They didn't want advice. They wanted salvation. And I already had the roadmap. Before I left, they handed me a slim folder. "No pressure," they said. "Just think about it." Inside was a formal offer. Better title. More pay. Total autonomy. And one kicker, they needed help preparing for an upcoming audit. Of my old company. I walked home in a daze, wind biting through my coat. But I wasn't cold. I wasn't anxious. I was smiling, not the kind of grin you get from landing a new job, the kind you get when you see a man standing on a rug you're about to yank. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't storm the office. I just waited. And sharpened my blade, quietly. That HR ambush? It didn't crush me. It clarified the mission. I stopped streaming true crime and started staging my own. My screen became a tactical map. Job listings weren't opportunities, they were targets. I sifted through each one like it held secrets. Systems coordinator. Platform integration lead. Vendor risk analyst. Every role was cross-examined against the list of companies we'd ever frustrated with our half-baked launches and duct-taped fixes. I wasn't casting a wide net, I was loading a sniper rifle. If you'd ever been burned by our clumsy deployments, misrouted invoices, or authentication black holes, congrats. You just made my shortlist. By midnight, my workspace resembled a digital command center. Tabs blazed across both monitors. Multiple resume versions, each tailored with surgical intent. Coffee stains formed continents across old printouts of support tickets, problems I'd solved while others got promoted. If this was war, I wasn't a foot soldier. I was the payload. 2 days into the silent siege, my inbox lit up. Subject: Quick Sync Audit Assistance Request. The sender? James Harrington, Senior Systems Lead at Gen Axis Logistics, one of our firm's longest-standing partners. The kind of client who tolerated our bugs because switching providers felt like trying to swap airplane engines mid-flight. We'd abused that loyalty for years. He opened with, "Your name came up during a retrospective on unresolved incidents. We found your signature on a ticket that corrected a credential loop everyone else misdiagnosed. Wondered if you had time for a quick conversation?" I read it twice, not just because someone remembered me, but because they remembered accurately. We scheduled something informal. I told Brad I had a dental appointment. He grunted, barely lifting his eyes from a YouTube tab. Let him assume I was licking HR wounds. I walked into Gen Axis HQ in the same navy blazer I'd worn on my last disappointing first date. They led me past frosted glass partitions and into a clean, crisp conference space. One wall still bore the whiteboard ghosts of last month's infrastructure meltdown. A single bullet point read, "Redesign API flow, urgent," with 5 underlines and one sad face. James arrived with lemon water and questions. "We're not here to throw your current employer under the bus," he began. "But we've noticed a pattern. Your name keeps showing up in the resolution logs. And when you're not involved, well, let's just say problems linger." He wasn't wrong. Their platform was still limping along on outdated scripts and workaround protocols that should have been buried years ago. Credentials triggered lockouts. Billing files showed up encrypted using methods we deprecated during the last leap year. Their SSO was a joke, admin resets routed to a no-reply mailbox. Every issue pointed to us. But every solution had a fingerprint. Mine. I didn't brag. Didn't sell. They'd already connected the dots. "I don't want to stir the pot," I said calmly, sipping espresso that tasted like it had never known a breakroom Keurig. "Just exploring possibilities." He smiled like a man who respected quiet ambition. "We wrapped in under an hour." "No pressure," he said. "Just consider it." I walked home with an overpriced salad and a strange calm. I stared at my inbox for hours. The message came at dawn. Subject: Formal offer, Q4 timeline consideration attached, contract, salary figures, start date. Just in time for the upcoming vendor review. They didn't want help, they wanted the insider who knew where every body was buried, and had labeled the graves. My hand hovered over the download icon. This wasn't just a new chapter. This was vindication, wrapped in legalese, signed with a logo my former employer had to acknowledge. By day, I still played the role. Quiet analyst. Kept off group threads. Forgotten until something caught fire. But behind closed tabs, I became something else entirely. A systems surgeon. I dissected Gen Axis's architecture line by line, snipping away legacy rot and bad patches like a scalpel through scar tissue. I worked late. Not for them, for me. Every solution was a stitch in a narrative I was writing by hand. One where the girl dismissed as sweetheart built the rival engine powering her old firm's audit. I started small. Pulled archived logs I'd saved for training. Cataloged breakdowns, flagged compliance gaps. The more I found, the more they trusted me. I was their translator, the one who spoke the dialect of digital chaos my former team had left behind, and the best part? Every time they praised my work, I forwarded the praise to myself, because they weren't just fixing systems, they were building me a throne. A wink. Nod. Log IDs from memory. Each one a breadcrumb no one credited, but I remembered exactly where they led. I reconstructed credential flows in silence. Diagrammed disaster paths on sticky notes until my desk looked like the set of a conspiracy documentary, minus the dramatic voiceover. What I uncovered wasn't a system. It was a time bomb, legacy code tangled with undocumented scripts. Abandoned functions hiding in plain sight. Obsolete libraries Frankensteined into active builds because Steve from DevOps read a forum post claiming backward compatibility was a coward's crutch. It was a digital scrapyard, and somehow, it was mine to clean. Weekends became battlegrounds. Saturdays, disassembling integration logic from memory, no access needed. Sundays, rebuilding them into digestible slide decks, complete with flagged risks, recommended rewrites, and solution summaries wrapped in vendor-safe phrasing. Gen Axis consumed every bite like it was gourmet. Their CTO looped me into Slack threads that weren't public. Off hours. Off record. But deadly serious. Point 1. By 1, they shifted tone. No longer the outsider. No longer junior. Not a stopgap. A specialist. Meanwhile, at HQ? Same farce, different Tuesday. Brad kept pinging requests for a cleaner UI on this pie chart or more dynamic dashboards for leadership. He never once asked where the data came from, how it flowed, or what broke when his filters didn't load. He didn't know. He didn't want to know who. Denise from HR passed me in the hallway, nodded like she'd just remembered to water a dying plant. No one questioned. The silence. No one suspected the transition, but my resignation letter? Saved in a folder labeled housekeeping. Timestamped. Ready back at Gen Axis, doors creaked open. I got sandbox access. Limited, at first, just enough to validate the chaos. I audited back-end processes, surfaced discrepancies, and rewrote failure summaries in legal-safe terminology. They started calling me their bridge, the one person who could translate cryptic system logs into boardroom-friendly language. That I didn't just find gaps. I patched them. Their billing cycle stabilized. Reports aligned. Credentials stopped triggering. Ghost errors. I became the whisper in meetings. Ask her. She'll know. Let's run it by Caldwell first. The same people who once ignored my Jira tickets now rerouted major decisions through my inbox. At home, I'd drop my keys, brew tea, and open a terminal, not because I had to, but because I mattered. I wasn't managing someone else's negligence. I was building something my own. Then came the pivot point. A Gen Axis leadership sync. Virtual, of course. Grid of faces lit by laptop glow and fatigue. Legal flagged growing concerns about our firm's ability to scale. Logistics echoed frustrations, data lags, invoice mismatches, integration bottlenecks. The usual storm of disappointment. Then, their VP of operations looked directly into his webcam, eyes steady. What if she didn't just consult? Everyone stilled. You mean, lead the audit? Someone asked. He shook his head. Not just the audit. The whole thing. Infrastructure. Vendor transitions. Full platform oversight. She already understands more than the team we're paying six figures to fail. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was consensus. That evening, my inbox delivered a formal proposal. Lead systems strategist. Full-time. Near double my current salary. Direct report to senior leadership. A seat at the table I'd never been invited to clean, but I didn't sign. Not yet. See, vengeance isn't an impulse. It's a ritual, and rituals require timing. My exit needed precision. Not for theatrics. For impact. I picked a Wednesday, midweek. Mid-quarter, mid-muddle. Brad hadn't even said, "Good morning," when I slid my resignation across the desk. The HR platform tried to make it feel like a subscription cancellation. Checkbox after checkbox. Click, confirm. A dull blue banner flashed. "We're sorry to see you go." "No, you're not." Denise didn't summon me for a debrief. Just auto-replied with a bland PDF titled, "Transition Guidelines for Junior Departures." Irony? The document was corrupted. Wouldn't even open. I renamed it, Art. Brad, true to form, made it weird. He swaggered over with that cologne-drenched smugness and leaned across the divider like a bad sitcom dad. So, he smirked. "You're piecing out. Gen Axis, huh?" Word as they churn through analysts like my ex-burned sage. I gave him a nod. "The kind reserved for cab drivers who ask if you like being single. Good luck," he added, self-satisfied. "You'll be back." They all come back. They don't, not this one. Because while he hovered over my old desk trying to make sense of pivot tables I built blindfolded, I was already logged in elsewhere, designing roadmaps, validating specs, reviewing postmortems I didn't have to fix but chose to anyway. My pre-audit blueprint was halfway finished, and when I walked back through those doors, it wouldn't be as a contractor. It'd be as the architect of their replacement. James had quietly added me to their internal security threads, disguised behind the alias consultant, Phase 0. It sounded like a video game character. I felt like one too. Buried beneath layers of diagnostic dumps and forensic reports, I sifted through the wreckage left by a decade of systemic negligence I knew intimately. Each oversight? Documented in my head. Every shortcut? Etched in muscle memory. The SSL certificate that expired without renewal, the temporary workaround never reversed, the sensitive fields we logged in plain text because no one's watching. They were watching now. And I was holding the magnifying glass. I end those 2 weeks before the curtain dropped. I became the perfect professional mirage. I responded to Slack threads with helpful, surface-level input. Forwarded skeleton documentation. That passed the sniff test, but no more. I attended my last team sync with my camera off and audio glitching. The pixelated ghost of someone they never bothered to understand. No one asked about my plans. They never do. They assumed I was hopping laterally. Or downward. They always do. That Friday, while they debated new cafeteria coffee policies on the company chat like it was constitutional law, I packed my things. My half-empty box held a chipped mug, a mechanical keyboard I'd bought to drown out the sound of mediocrity, and one post-it with a quote scrawled from Good Will Hunting, "You're not perfect, sport." And let me save you the suspense, this girl you met, she's not perfect either. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because it was the only thing in that place that ever felt honest. Before walking out, I flipped open my paper planner, analog, dependable, judgment-free. 2 pages forward, I wrote in bold, all caps, audit day, Monday. Twice underlined. Once mentally engraved, leaving that building didn't feel like goodbye. It felt like peeling off old skin. It didn't ache. It just didn't belong anymore. I didn't look back. Why would I? The next time I crossed that threshold, it wouldn't be with a badge chipped at the edges or a key card held together with office tape. It would be with authority. Leverage. Evidence. It would be mine. Monday came fast. I walked through the lobby like I'd never seen it before. Same bland walls, same undertones of toner and stress, same front desk with the same bored receptionist who once forgot my name 3 months into my contract. But now? Different energy. My navy blazer was custom. My bag carried more than electronics, it carried power. Security barely glanced at my guest credentials. New employer. New access. New gravity. I stepped into the elevator and caught my reflection in the mirror-polished walls. Same eyes. Same spine. But the woman staring back wasn't unsure, wasn't grateful, wasn't tolerating. She was composed. Controlled. Coming back not for closure, but conquest. When the doors opened, the reaction was immediate, shock. Whispers. Kyle from data nearly dropped his thermos. 2 engineers trailed off mid-conversation and stared. One mouthed, "That's her." Like I was folklore. A ghost story told over glitchy systems and coffee breaks. Then, HR's Denise, she froze in front of the fishbowl conference room, gripping her reusable water bottle like it had magical protection properties. Her eyes scanned my badge. Recognition bloomed into panic. "Welcome back," she said, each syllable like glass in her throat. I smiled. "I'm here for the audit." She tried to keep it cordial. Tried to play casual. But her voice cracked. Like brittle veneer. "You're assisting the Gen Axis team?" I opened my laptop just enough to show the title slide, Lead Systems Auditor, External Compliance Liaison. Her swallow was audible. It echoed like a warning bell, inside the glass-walled war room. Greg, the same VP who once told me I had potential if I learned to stay in my lane, jumped when he saw me. In his rush to act normal, he knocked over his travel mug. Coffee bled across outdated reports that I had flagged obsolete a year ago. He wiped his palm on his tie. Dignity unraveling. "Didn't realize you'd be joining us," he stammered. Forced smile twitching at the edges. I walked to the head of the table. Not the side. Not the periphery. The head. "Joining?" I repeated, booting up. "No. I'm running this." I clicked. The projector flared. Full system and compliance review. 12-month retrospective. Dead silence. Greg blinked, trying to compute. 12 months? I didn't blink. Per clause 9.3 of your agreement with Gen Access, a full annual retrospective is mandatory. That includes vendor interactions, integration logs, identity management workflows, and all certifications dating back to last fiscal year. I paused just long enough for it to sting. "I've already reviewed your vendor funnel and found inconsistencies in onboarding timestamps. I'll also need complete access to archived integration tickets before close of business." Denise dropped her pen. Somewhere in the back, someone muttered a curse they didn't mean to say aloud, and I smiled, not a grin. Not smug. Just enough to say, "You had your chance, but only the overlooked learn to speak revenge fluently. See, ghosts don't knock. They seep through walls built on denial and cheap security protocols." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't make threats. I just presented evidence, cold, clinical, damning. 3 days into the audit, and the walls of my old company weren't just creaking, they were starting to buckle. My findings folder had ballooned into a forensic treasure trove, scrambled. Login chains, department-wide access tokens shared like leftover birthday cake, expired certifications gathering digital cobwebs, and admin rights tied to names long erased from the building directory. Gen Access had given me complete visibility. And I didn't blink. Each report I submitted was armed to the teeth, timestamped anomalies, Slack conversations with execs pretending fires didn't exist while data hemorrhaged behind them. Screenshots, metadata, archival comparisons. It was less of an audit and more of a digital inquisition. By Thursday, the temperature in the room had dropped 10 degrees. Greg's jaw clenched every time I clicked a slide. Legal joined remotely, silent and watchful. Finance huddled in the hallway. Like they were preparing for a storm. And then, jackpot. A spreadsheet. An open access Excel file buried in SharePoint hell. Its name, vendor_access_final_v4_edited_real_use_this.xlsx. I wish I were kidding. Unencrypted. No audit trail. Modified last by, wait for it, and in turn. I opened it slowly, letting the moment simmer. Then I turned the screen to the room like I was hosting a corporate horror show. "This one's a personal favorite," I said evenly. Denise fidgeted in Her chair, that wasn't intended for permanent use, she offered, already on the defensive. No kidding, I replied. Your policy prohibits shared login documentation stored in unsecured repositories. Yet, here it is. 9 edits. 37 views. 3 of them from external IPs located in New Jersey, none of which match your internal VPN schema. Greg cleared his throat, face turning the color of a stress rash. It's hard to assign blame without context. Maybe the analyst before, what was her name? I turned, direct, eyes steady, you mean me? The silence was seismic. Greg blinked. Denise looked away. I let the stillness stretch, just long enough to draw blood without breaking skin. Then, I slid a manila folder across the polished table. I'm happy to submit a sworn statement, I offered. Would you prefer it notarized? On the Zoom call, legal unmuted for the first time. Cough.by end of day, Gen Axis had frozen all transactions to my former employer. Procurement went dark. Support queues imploded. Slack channels detonated with frantic pings, desperate execs tagging junior developers for lifelines they never taught them to throw. That night, James texted me, nice work. Keep going. Let's see what else surfaces. I intended to. The integration. Logs hadn't even begun to smell yet. But when they did, every overlooked error would light up like a runway. Every misstep, every lazy fix, every buried screw-up, signed, sealed, and traceable to the people who thought I was expendable. By Friday, the entire building reeked of desperation. Not from what I said, just from what I showed. Greg tried to act composed during our morning sync. Tossed around phrases like isolated incident and corrective pathing, like he was cleaning up a coffee spill, not a breach waiting to go public. Denise had vanished from the audit suite entirely. Likely somewhere deep in the HR maze, rearranging policies with incense and denial. But the tension? It was physical. You could feel it in your teeth. Engineers I hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly pinging me with clarification questions. Managers forwarded Jira tickets that somehow still had my name on them, as if I were ghost coding from beyond the cubicle grave. Then came the email. The subject line, quick chat? From a director I hadn't heard from since that meeting where I'd pointed out, politely, professionally, that their automation roadmap depended on a deprecated data pipeline. I flagged, twice. They told me to stay in my lane. Now, given your deep familiarity with our architecture, we'd love to explore a limited consulting opportunity to stabilize core components. Compensation will reflect your seniority. I read that message twice, then a third time, for the dramatic flair. I laughed, replied in kind. My rate is 5 times what you previously paid. Weekly. Upfront. No exceptions. I hit send with the force of a decade's worth of unacknowledged labor. Their response came less than 60 minutes later. We'll be in touch. Of course they would. Later that evening, I poured a drink, something rich, peaty, poured neat. Deserved. My inbox chimed again, not from the executive tier this time, from below. Quiet. Subject lines. Messages like soft knocks on a closed door. Hey, quick question, you hiring? Mind if I ask your advice? I opened the first. I smiled, not out of spite. Not because they finally saw the damage. But because they finally saw me. The developer who once avoided eye contact during stand-ups? He reached out. Said things felt shaky. Said the leadership team was unraveling. Told me he remembered how I always seemed 2 steps ahead, how I never panicked when systems fell apart. Now he wanted out. The next message came from a support rep, someone I'd barely spoken to when we shared office space. Their workload had exploded. Training requests ignored. Backlog snowballing. They were drowning. And they wanted help. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just an audit anymore, this was an exodus, and I was the one steering the boat. At Gen Axis, my business card still had the same title. But in practice? My scope expanded every hour. James introduced me to their CIO over coffee. There was talk of creating an internal oversight squad, nimble, strategic, made of people who could think clearly before the fire started. They needed minds built for crisis. They needed survivors, they needed me, and apparently, they wanted more just like me. So I opened a fresh document and started listing names, beginning with those quietly filling my inbox. Individuals who used to sit beside me, heads down, never noticing the way I patched code at midnight or covered for systems they didn't bother learning. The ones who memorized dance routines while I mapped broken APIs. Now they were asking for life vests. I had more than enough to go around. Let them squirm. Let them finally understand what it costs to ignore the one person keeping the building from burning to the ground, because I wasn't junior anymore. I was the reckoning. It happened quietly. No announcement. No farewell email, just a short note. CC'd to every executive who once forgot my name. Subject: termination of vendor contract, due to non-compliance and critical security breaches. 2 lines. No emotion. Just impact, effective immediately, partnership dissolved. System permissions revoked. Payments halted. Data migration ceased, the ripple effect was immediate, and deafening. By lunch, Brad had posted a vague LinkedIn status about embracing change. Greg revised his bio to emphasize transformative resilience. And Denise? Well, she hadn't said a word online, but she didn't know what was waiting inside conference room 3B. The same glass cage where she once gave me that pitiful speech about career maturity and handed me a pamphlet that might as well have said, "Know your place." Only this time, I wasn't holding a visitor pass. This time, the room was mine. Gen Axis didn't just absorb the project, they rebuilt the entire compliance division from the ashes. Around me, internal audits, vendor vetting, architecture roadmaps, governance protocols, all reporting directly to my desk. James handed me my new credentials that morning. Title: Director of Systems Integrity and Oversight Clearance, top-tier office, private, glass wall, executive-level email signature, weighted like a gavel. The first official quarterly strategy review was scheduled for 2 p.m. I'd curated the team. Every face in that room was handpicked: technicians, analysts, architects, each one hired not for credentials, but because they saw through the noise. They followed me because they understood the cost of letting rot fester. At precisely 2 o'clock. The door opened. Denise walked in, escorted by a Gen Axis liaison. Her badge hung heavier than usual. The smile was gone. She sat across from me, same spot I once occupied, smaller then, unheard. Now? Her eyes darted to the folder I placed on the table. I flipped it open with surgical care. The cover page had 3 words stamped in bold: termination recommendations, policy and governance breaches. I rotated the document, slid it across the polished surface without saying a word. Her name appeared just below 2 others, colleagues, who had once dismissed me with half-laughs and half-hearted advice. She reached for the paper with fingers that didn't use to tremble. I locked eyes. "We negotiate now," I said, voice measured. Brief pause. Dead calm. Not a trace of anger, just, "Not with people like you." She didn't speak. Didn't need to, because every page in that folder was a receipt, dated, sourced, unshakable. I turned to my team. The ones who once watched me suffer in silence. Now they watched me lead in clarity. Every audit line, every transition protocol, every policy shift. We ran it together, and not one chart looked like a crime scene anymore. So if you're still watching this and you've ever been made to feel invisible, if they ever told you that you weren't ready, weren't worth the raise, or didn't belong at the big table, don't quit. Stay calm. Build your case. Rewrite the rules, and when the time comes, walk through the same door they shoved you out of, and own the building. Subscribe, Cubicle Warriors. Unless you're Brad, then I hope you enjoy contract work.